Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Weekly Review. I'm your host, Paul Hazard, and with me this morning we have Catherine Taylor, John Gibbs, and Lucy Newberger. I'm zigzagging all over the screen there this morning. You're all very welcome. It's been a busy week on the education front, and we learned that it's easier to get two wayward squirrels off a Gatwick Express than it is to get your Year 11s back in after a lovely sunshiny morning at break time. We also know that if you're like me and you have one of these phones, I'll not show you my shoes, and you have a haircut like me, it's going to be pretty soon that you're going to be put out of school. Now, when that happened in my school, we used to send pupils home until their hair grew back. I wonder, does the panel think my hair would grow back before Halloween?
Yes.
Just on a technical note, the panel were supposed to be on mute when I said that. And in late breaking news, Kerry Katona has been unanimously elected as president of the Geography Teachers Society. So congratulations to Kerry. We will, however, be right back with some serious stories after these messages from our sponsors.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. John Catt have an exceptional collection of book titles that cover a range of educational topics, ideas and research. The books are aimed at forward-thinking schools and support best practice teaching for both primary and secondary education. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order.
How can you show your students the opportunities that await them? How can you fuel their aspirations and motivate them to achieve? Futurum Careers provides a wealth of stimulating resources aimed at encouraging 14 to 19-year-olds to pursue careers in STEM and SHAPE. We help you to show your students what they can aim for and how. From articles to activity sheets, animations to podcasts, all our resources align with Gatsby benchmarks and are free for you and your students to download. Visit futurumcareers.com and subscribe today. Futurum Careers, helping teachers to inspire the next generation.
Introducing Reading Solutions UK, home to Dreambox Reading Plus, the online reading development programme improving outcomes for students and schools nationwide. Create stronger readers in your school from Key Stage 2 to beyond GCSE, using Reading Plus's evidence-based adaptive technology. Reading Plus accurately assesses your students' skills gaps and places them on a personalised learning pathway, built to accelerate their strengths and improve on their areas for development. You can try the programme with a free 4-week pilot today. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request your free pilot today.
Welcome back. A story appeared this week where two well-known mayors, Andy Burnham and Steve Rotherham, have made a claim for greater control over schools. They want to oversee schools. Now, this strikes me as a bit of a strange request. John, do you see anything sinister in this?
No, actually, I don't. Unless I'm missing something. I'm unfazed by this. Really, I think in a sense, it's what we should be doing with this new government. Is exploring when we're looking at schools and how they're and the governance of schools. We should be looking at ways of making them accountable regionally, locally. And when I say accountable, I mean also I think cooperating, looking at local differences, looking at local needs and so on. It seems to be perfectly natural that we should do this. Whether this is the right way to do it, exactly what sort of powers mayors should have, And there will be a price to pay. You know, when you get politicians involved in education, there will be problems. You have to be careful about keeping, say, funding away from them. You don't want to go down the road of the United States, where local exam boards and things start cutting funding because of different sorts of priorities, or banning books or things of that kind. So yes, done in the right way, I've no problem with local democracy, local accountability, regional improvement teams. Seems like a good idea, really. It's a bit like Back to the Future. You know, this is like special advisors all over again. If there's something sinister, and thank you for that word, Paul. If there's something sinister, I think the sinister things are multi-academy trusts. I think they come in all shapes and sizes, good, bad, and the ugly, but that they are potentially sinister because they've introduced. No, they aren't potentially sinister. They are sinister because they introduce a marketization, which is itself quite ideological and has poisoned our education system. I'm disappointed, if anything, that Bridget Phillipson has said, well, you know, the multi-academy trusts have a role to play as far as you can see. I want to see them out of the way. That was a terribly dead end to go down. We should never have gone in the direction of multi-academy trusts. Local accountability in some form or another, with all of its faults. Yeah, have that. Definitely.
And I see those multi-academy trusts, I see they want to align themselves with these mayors. And I did wonder, and maybe it's because Lucy and I have an upcoming program on critical literacy. I wonder, you know, am I questioning this so much? Because I maybe there is something in it. Are they trying to move away from DFE scrutiny into more local scrutiny? I don't know. Catherine, I had a bit of a thought that this might be something of a Brexit for local schools. Is that what it's going to be?
I think that's an emotive term to throw in, and I think it gets the debate going. I don't know that I've got a particular problem with local areas having sort of some kind of input into the local education for the local people. Context is king, and I think that's really, really important. I also don't know that it's anything. You know, it's a layer within a system. I don't think it replaces. It's not. I don't see why it would be an either or. It's you also get on trustee and governing bodies all kinds of people with all kinds of interests. So I don't know that it's adding. It's another voice within the conversation, and certainly you could have a board of trustees with, you know, very few people with their background in education on it. I don't know that that's different. It's a different way, but it's not anything so unusual. Like suddenly there's people making decisions about education who aren't educationalists. I think probably there are conversations to be had, and like all of these things, I think there's all kinds of benefits that might be wrought from it. There are all kinds of dangers that might come from it if it starts to, you know, the idea that they could ban a book in a district, that's not great. That's very unpleasant. Those are exactly the kind of books people should read. But yeah, I don't know that Brexitizing it is pour some fuel on your fire.
Well, I'm not winning many people over this morning. Yeah, we have a very complex system in Northern Ireland where the local councils do look after some of the sectors of school, or they at least have a significant say. Catherine, you hinted at something there. I mean, local councils are made up of all sorts of people from all kinds of backgrounds. They're elected. You know, you get the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. And much as I love all of their work, in fact, I'm going to be having bacon, eggs, and some bread shortly after this show, and I may even light a candle. I may light a candle, is right. And I do, you know, I have, you know, time for these people who want to give of their time and give freely with goodwill and so on and so forth. But Lucy, as Catherine's already hinted, does that not put us in a position where people who are not educationalists, could be taking decisions about schools that are very long and far-reaching. And is that a good thing?
Yes and no. I mean, I think if you're going to come down to local level, the good thing about that is that people in local communities, I think, as Catherine said, understand that community. And I know I've talked a lot about how important it is to have cohesion within different communities, and different schools in different contexts need different things. So people at local level are going to understand that more readily than, you know, the DFE, the higher ups. I do think that there does need to be layers to this. I think you would need a structure kind of within a structure. So by all means, have some accountability at local level. By all means, involve people in the community, but ensure that it is made up of enough people who work within education, who are teachers, head teachers, teaching assistants, you know. So make sure that if you are going to take it down to local level, that those people are the majority, and have a few others in there to diversify it, to have a bit more in there, by all means, but they can't be the majority. It has to be people who are working within these schools, within the locality. Otherwise, to me, this is an entirely pointless exercise.
Mm-hmm. John, go ahead. Yeah,
I'll add one endorsement to that. Absolutely. I don't mind the butcher, the baker, candlestick maker. If they're local people, absolutely. You know, if they're drawn from the local community, there's a different voice. It's a bit like being the England football. Everyone can be the England football manager. Everyone knows how to run schools. So there will be interference. There will be people who aren't informed. There will be local people, but it's a local voice. What I don't like is when you get the, as you can tell, because I said it before, so I'll say it again, the multi-academy trust, where self-appointed entrepreneurial, this sort of gods of entrepreneurialness, businessmen and so on, that people imagine are going to be good at running schools just because they can run something else. And they introduce into schools business type, data-driven assessment methods, or they follow the market whims of what they think will sell well to parents.
You get it a lot with international schools now, with the corporate takeovers. With that, it's very much the same vibe.
Yeah. We've allowed this to happen, this corporate takeover. It's a lovely, exactly. Get rid of that.
Well, it remains to be seen what will happen. So on to our next story. Now, our panelists are all passionate about this story. A headline appeared during the week: "No GCSE student should have to read of mice and men again." Oh dear. Now, it's probably fair to say there is general agreement that the list of prescribed texts, I mean, it is something like cold, greasy dishwater at the minute. It's not something you want to really run towards. Students are not inspired, and their teachers are jaded, and they're teaching the same books, often to multiple groups per year over many years. And in fact, you know, many teachers in their own school days probably read of Mice and Men and answered GCSE questions on it. Lucy, you did. Lucy, what can be done to enliven texts for students and, you know, for teachers teaching, and maybe, you know, to make sure that children succeed at GCSE, but that also they become committed readers? What can we do?
I think this begins in primary, to be honest. I mean, and as a primary teacher, the number of parents, and I'm sure there'll be primary teachers nodding along, and I'm sure Leanne's nodding along in the background as a primary teacher, you know, the battle of kind of getting children to read in the first place without killing that enjoyment for them. They have to be inspired to do it. There has to be variety. There has to be, okay, you can, yes, graphic novels can feed into the mix. Yes, comic books. Yes, all these things can feed in, biographies. And I think instilling that from a young age and showing children what's out there, we do have to lead the way here, particularly with all the modern distractions that we have, with children being told, you know, that there's far more fun things to do over here, with audiobooks and things like that. Audiobooks count as reading. It does. Okay, you haven't got you can have the audiobook and follow along, but I think it's understanding from a young age that all these things are available, that there is variety, and that needs to be carried through the curriculum as a whole. So whether you're looking at geography and books and literature linked to geography, history, whatever it is. Start them young and then carry that through. And then hopefully, again, in my whimsical little world where all these things work out, that will carry through. And then there does need to be an overhaul of these exams and these texts. And there's so much fantastic modern young adult literature out there that I think could be used, not examined on, but looked at, explored without the pressure of those exams. And I know we kind of talked about this before we came on air. And it's just, I think using these books are fantastic in their own right, but they don't speak to children in the modern age. They don't even speak to me, and I'm that little bit older now. So how on earth am I going to get a 16-year-old to feel joy about Of Mice and Men? I'm not, because it doesn't, there's very little that I can kind of connect to them through that particular book. And again, I think this is contextual, and I think this is linked to communities, and I don't think it needs to be sort of so kind of as rigid as it is.
Times have definitely changed, and children and their interests and their needs have changed as well. John, they make the point that there's an absence of writers of colour. Is there a case to be made, for positive action and positive discrimination here, and the inclusion of writers of colour? So the children are inspired, they see their culture reflected in what they read.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. There is a case to be made, and I know the reaction that'll get. The reaction is, you must have the best that can be thought and said, the canon of English literature, the finest, and so on. And you can't start making judgments about of that kind that positively discriminate in favour of less good books. But the aim, as we talked about before we came on air, as it were, or out on the internet, is that get kids reading, as Lucy says, get them enjoying books. And it can be, if you like, the lyrics of Taylor Swift, if you want. They're quite literary, they really are. And or you can read graphic novels, or you can read a broad variety of things which will interest kids. Or you can read The Fairy Queen, Spencer's Fairy Queen, or you can read Paradise Lost if you want, if you're going to do it in a way which interests and fascinates and makes exciting. Drama, use drama, use play, use role play, make literature fun. And the poison, I'm using that again today, actually. Another poison, I must be into that this morning, of our education system is exams. Get rid of the GCSE in English literature. In the end, so many students are forced to learn in very mechanistic kind of way how to do the exam bait. Say the thing which is going to do. That's why Mice and Men is chosen, because Mice and Men's easy to teach. It's a sort of morality parable. You can use it in a sort of secular age to make moral points about racism or something, or disability.
Yeah.
But the problem is it's there because teachers will be familiar with it. They've got the resources. Books are in the stock room, and it's easy to teach to score in exams. Get rid of the exams. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Not A level necessarily, but even that there are problems.
Catherine, John has, really preempted where I kind of wanted to go with this, and so has Lucy to an extent as well. When you walk into a bookshop and you look at what sells and you look at what people are buying, it isn't always like heavy literature or traditional literature. Lucy talked about graphic novels. There is a resurgence, in thriller writers. And I'll be honest, they're not really pulp fiction anymore. They're well crafted, there's social commentary, there's a character arc, the characters change and so on. Is there a case for, those popular and well-read novels, like thrillers and so on, for children to read those in schools and then maybe move on, as John suggests, A level to more traditional and maybe more heavy literature?
I think there's definitely a good case to make for children reading books which are exciting and contemporary, and there's a place for everything, isn't there? I mean, I had an experience in the summer holidays. We went on holiday and forgot my little boy's book. We had to go to a supermarket and get another book, and the book we got was by a certain well-known children's author, and we haven't finished it. So there's good and there's stuff which is not to our taste, and you can't always, I think you need variety. But then again, we read all kinds of Terry Pratchett and stuff to our son, so maybe it's us that's the problem. So yeah, I think there's all kinds of things, but I do want to make a point about workload and cost, actually, because it is not nothing. I changed exam boards recently in my subject, and it's not English literature, but it meant we had to buy new books, and part of my decision making was how much will it cost to buy a new set of textbooks, and there is a cost. And also, if I teach a different exam board or teach a different book, then I have to do a whole bunch of work that I wouldn't have had to do. There you go. I clearly do need to study English because I can't speak. But there's a workload consideration, there's a cost consideration, and they shouldn't be the top considerations, because we should be well funded and not time poor. But the matter of fact is that we are not well funded and we are time poor, and so those things play into it. So it's complicated. Everything's complicated.
Well, there are obstacles and barriers, but we're all in agreement that the prescribed lists should change. Quality literature, oh gosh, I can't read either. Quality literature has no colour, but Shakespeare will be virtually unknown in 50 years if he isn't taught in schools. And I suspect, and I'm going to speak on behalf of all the panelists because we're running tight on time, I suspect we're not saying that Shakespeare shouldn't be taught, but the point at which Shakespeare should be taught, and the point at which, the full text of Shakespeare should be taught, that should maybe be looked at and maybe kind of tweaked a bit. And, that magnificent work of Shakespeare can sit alongside the novels of Terry Pratchett and others. And, that can lead to a lot of commitment to reading. John will have to be very quick.
I think showing a lamentable lack of faith in Shakespeare. He can stand up for himself. Doesn't have to be forced into students' minds at school.
Yeah. On to our third story for today. Now, we all know there is a recruitment and retention crisis in teaching. And last week I mentioned that in the UK, teachers are leaving at 9% per annum. Now, attrition rates are most prevalent among women aged 30 to 39. And that group makes up 27% of the teaching population, which is more than all the males who are in teaching. That's a shocking statistic. Now, women aged 30 to 39, quite often, they're middle and senior management, and they're leaving at a much faster rate. That's around about 12% of those very experienced teachers just leaving. 20,000 women aged 30 to 39 have left the profession in the last 2 years. A couple of other statistics before we move on to our panelists. 40% of new teachers in the UK are no longer teaching after 5 years. And just by way of comparison, attrition rates in Finland are 1%, France 4%, and Germany is 5%. Now, this week in the news, we had a raft of incentives announced to try and stop the hemorrhaging of teachers and entice graduates into the job. So we had the reimbursement of student loans. We have working from home. We have a specific focus on trying to retain women who are 30 to 39. And we have the wider programme of the right to disconnect, which also exists in Ireland and in France at the minute. And I think a favourite among our panellists is the ability to have a morning lie-in. So there we go. Catherine, if I could come to you first, will this eclectic mix or raft of enticements, will it have any impact on recruitment and retention?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that the reason that the women 30 to 39 are leaving is not compatible with being given a lie-in. So, that your house is not going to be a place where you can be a lady of leisure, because it's probably kids that are keeping you out of the workplace. So, yeah, there's some... I think creative thinking around this issue is good. I think that there are a huge amount of people with a huge amount of needs that will, there will be something that someone will go, oh, actually, I might consider that. I think that, I can't remember, and I should have looked it up, but you can calculate how many people go back into teaching, and I'm going to say something like 3.5% per year. It's around 14,000 to 17,000 teachers a year go back in, whether that's when they're, 42, I don't know. So it's a really dynamic situation, but certainly there's more going out or not going in than there are going back in. So it's a net loss. I do think it's important to look at what are the push factors. And I think that there's a huge amount to be said for the fit, sort of match quality in work, because if you fit in your workplace and your values align with your workplace's values, then you will do whatever you can to stay in that workplace. If you are in a workplace which toxic, we throw that word around a lot, but it may not be objectively toxic, but if you don't fit in there, then you will experience that as toxic. So, if we've got a misalignment of what teachers consider to be good professional working conditions, and they don't find those in schools, that would be where I'd start, not with lie-ins and things like that, because although that's attractive, I don't, it's a finger in the I want to yeah yeah, it's not stopping the flood.
Yeah, well, something of a gimmick, and I think it's good that we can laugh at it and take it in perspective. Interesting point. If you do read Twitter X, you will see a lot of teachers at the moment whose enthusiasm and commitment is really reignited, because in July they moved away from toxic schools. Terrible word, but it fits the purpose we want. And they've moved into a school where, as you say, Catherine, the fit is just so much better. The leadership, the atmosphere, the ethos is different. And it's just transformative. It's worth reading those comments on Twitter. Lucy, I know, we laugh at those things. Some of them are gimmicks and so on. But the reality is teachers need money. Behavior needs to change. Are those not the things that are going to change the number of young people coming into teaching and stem the exit of experienced teachers?
Yes, I think that, I want to make the point of, these lie-in ideas and all that Catherine sort of talked about, there are going to be a lot of people for whom that's not necessarily the answer. What went through my head is, well, if I'm in bed, theoretically, who's covering my class? Who's picking up, how is this working? Where my mind went was, how are we covering this? How does that work? Because yes, I would love to. As much as I'm bang in the middle of that 30 to 39 months, I don't have children, but so I could take the opportunity of that lie-in, but the guilt of people being left to pick up my class or whatever it was would be terrible. So there's that. In terms of keeping us in, I think that's more of an issue than bringing the newbies in at the moment. I'm sort of less concerned about bringing Gen Z, and I'm more concerned about incentivizing the people that are my sort of age. I've been doing this for nearly 10 years, and I'm very much umming and ahhing about whether to stay, whether to go back to the UK, whether to kind of stay in international teaching, whatever it is. And there's nothing sort of that's bringing me back. The the professional development's not there. The funding's not there. The support from some, not all, senior leaders is not there. So I'm more interested in how you're going to keep me. Yes, I'm more expensive, and I should be wanting to say, but I should be wanting to continue kind of giving a large part of my life to this profession. I'm not worried about bringing the young ones in. Yes, they need to. We always need fresh blood. But what about those of us who are there? And at the moment, I don't feel there's enough energy being put into people my sort of age and the older ones and the ones who are, told they're even more expensive than me. And so there's no sort of, they find it so hard to get jobs and to be kept because it's a money thing. And I think, well, there's something to be said for experienced teachers, and there's always something to be said for newer teachers as well. But I want to see us lot incentivized. I want to see the energy put into that.
And I think you make a good point. There is a lot to be said for experienced teachers, because when those teachers go, the experience goes with them. And where then do the younger teachers, whom we need for their energy, their dynamism, their new approach, their new pedagogies and so on, but where do they learn the things that are difficult to teach to teachers, John, from our panelists, I'm picking up that morale is a bit dented with teachers. How is morale for teachers these days?
Well, to some extent, Catherine and Lucy have addressed this to a degree. I mean, in the end, I wrote down a collective endeavour and purpose. If you can get a school with a collective endeavour and purpose, you'll improve morale. And that sounds very airy-fairy, but in fact, didn't you say, well, that terrible behaviour of students, or lack of funding, or the books haven't been replaced for years? Oddly enough, you can deal with those things, because I've been in schools where the behaviour is pretty ropey and difficult, and it's hard. But if there's a collective endeavour and purpose, a sense that you're all in this together, you can sort of get through. Another feeling, and and Lucy points out, it's not unknown for schools to push out the experienced teachers, because experienced teachers don't like the kind of new managerialism or the change or the new trust that's taken over. And younger teachers are cheaper and so on. You think that'd be absolute madness, but it's not unknown. And there is a toxic atmosphere in a lot of schools, not all, probably not most. But there is a culture of bullying. There is a culture of, the number of non-disclosure agreements that teachers sign as they are forced out of the profession is astronomical. It's gone up dramatically of recent years. So there is a serious question to ask about how you have a sense in schools that this is a good place to work, even though it is going to be difficult. Yeah, money, by all means. Lie-ins, brilliant. Oh, by the way, I just had one thought. I used to walk to school for a number of years, and I'd get up in the morning at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, and I'd head out the house, and it was a mile or two to walk to school. I'd walk past a primary school, and the teachers were always already in. I always thought of myself as very virtuous because I was heading off early to get there before the kids came into school. But the primary teachers were always in, putting things and getting this classroom set up. You're not going to lie in if you're a primary teacher, I would have thought. Yeah,
very true. Very true. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Teachers have huge resilience. They will put up with an awful lot. And what they do, they need valued. The skills of experienced teachers are priceless. Well said, Lucy. One of our listeners. Anyway, on to our shows of the week. Catherine, what have you been listening to this week that's worth recommending?
I listened to Lucy and Hannah's show on neuro-affirming practices in the classroom. I really, really enjoyed it. I am the mother of a child who is definitely someone in need of those. And, he's now in a lovely school. We couldn't ask for anything more. But what I found really interesting about the show was almost the pedagogy of teachers understanding the need and actually helping the children and the students to pick the right fidget toy, to use it in the right way. And, you know, it's like, do you need to hold it? Do you need to move it? Do you need to press something against your legs? And to actually give the right intervention to the right child at the right time, and to not just say, you know, here's a fidget toy, just help yourself and crack on. And I really thought that was such an important point, because one size doesn't fit all. And also, you know, children, you know, my little boy at the moment, he is taking a teddy in, and I kind of think, well, does he really need to? You know, it's about getting the right intervention for the right child at the right time. And I think as educators, we really need to just be better informed about what are the needs and what are the best strategies for those particular needs.
Great. Yeah, super show. I listened to it too. Fantastic. Lucy, what about you? What have you been listening to?
Mr. John Gibbs, it was your show this week on restorative practices in schools, and it was Dr. Nicola Preston is her name? Yeah, she's had a very eclectic career, having been a police officer and then going into some training and then becoming a teacher a little bit later on. So she's had quite the journey. So her understanding of restorative justice and restorative practice is, of course, enormous. And so to then be able to apply that in the classroom and teach other people how to apply it, I think is fantastic. And a really interesting listen. Of course, I know people have different feelings about restorative practices, but I think that there still is a place for it based on listening to that show. So do go and take a listen back if you get the chance.
Great. Okay. And before we come to you, John, I'll tell you that I listened to Education Tonight with Adam and Brent, another TTR duo. Adam and Brent this week decided they would illustrate a point about mobile phones and that they would do it through some acting. And basically what they did, they confirmed what we already have known for some time, and that is that Steven Spielberg will not be calling boys. Anyway, it's a great show, and they explore mobile phones, which are hot in the news at the minute. In part 2, they took on Kerry Katona's comments about geography and so on, and you will have to watch to see if Brent's blood pressure does actually make it through the show. But in the inimitable style of Adam and Brent, as they do talk a lot about some very serious issues. It's a show well worth a listen or a watch, because as you know, most of our shows are also available as podcasts now. John, what would you recommend from this week?
Well, this week, I would recommend Michelle Hines' Twilight show on Do We Care Enough about optional subjects in schools? Because the answer absolutely is really no, we don't. And because we are dominated by this tyranny of STEM at the moment, where everything is quite arbitrarily good if it's maths or engineering or science or something of that kind, with some ridiculous idea that it is good for the economy. Instead, we tend to push aside, sort of odd hierarchy of subjects, dance and art and drama and all those things, which can be incorporated in many other subjects as well, and help students to enjoy school, to get those soft skills, and especially in a economy like ours, which is a creative economy. So they had two experienced teachers, I think it was Lacey and Remy, and they talked very, very passionately about the need to value all forms of learning, not just maths and science and so on. So it's a very good show.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, that's it for this week. Let us know if you've enjoyed the show. Thank you very much to our sponsors, John Catt, Futurum Careers and Reading Solutions. Many thanks to today's panelists, Catherine, Lucy and John, and a special thanks to Leanne in the background, who keeps it all right. Although at the moment, we're not speaking to her because she told us we should all be using the appearance filters on this show every Sunday morning. However, I will tell you that Leanne is making an appearance on Education Tonight this week, and that's sure to be a show not to be missed. Have a great week, everybody. See you next Sunday, same time, same place.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.